Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Finally Quit Porn podcast. I am joined by Mary Paulus. Welcome on the show, Mary. How are you feeling today?
I'm a little tired because I have a sick old cat who kept me up all night. And she might be at the end of her life, and I'm trying to make a decision. Just had to keep an eye on her, but she kept me up all night. So I'm glad to be upright and here. So here I am at the podcast. But yeah, I'm a little tired today. So
Yeah,
yeah, how are you?
yeah, I'm not surprised. It's sad because we see Tintin a lot as well, and we love Tintin.
Yeah.
Often in the podcasts in the background for any of our YouTube watchers as well. But yeah, I'm all right, thanks. Not too bad,
I
not too
think
bad.
she's coming. She's probably going to jump up on the chair now. So or she's going to hide under the other chair. We'll see. She's acting very strange. So just keeping an eye on her and hoping for the best at this point.
Yeah,
There
well,
she is on the floor hiding. She's not going to jump up on the chair. Maybe it's too much at this point. But she's here with us right there on the floor. So,
yeah,
yeah, that's good. I'm glad she's here. That's nice.
be like Tom Molyneux and Mary Paulus featuring special guest.
Right, especially that's right, totally. I know she's usually right there on the chair with us the whole
Yeah.
time. But she's on the floor. Maybe she just doesn't feel up to jumping up onto the chair today. So
Yeah.
we'll see. She's
Well,
an old girl, so yeah.
talking about helplessness, that is going to be the topic for today.
Helplessness, learned helplessness,
Learned
taught
helplessness.
helplessness.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
there's a lot of helplessness being taught out there. I was thinking about this earlier today, so I'm going to do a YouTube video on it about how NoFap really does teach people helplessness in so many ways, with
yeah,
like the removal of the triggers, with the staying busy,
yeah.
with the distraction techniques. It's all basically right. You can't deal with your urge. Go do something else.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's like, and like if somehow if you want something, you have to do it, rather than being able to deal with the wanting. And it's totally promoted out there in the world, it really is. It's just like if you want it, you do it, it's you're out of control. So yeah, helplessness is touted, not necessarily intentionally, but it's, I don't know. I feel like we're kind of in this world where everything is like about people like are kind of like suffering and like they need to do these things to make themselves feel better, regardless if they're like a destructive, addictive behavior. It's yeah. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about right now. So yeah.
I think the problem with a lot of the helplessness is that people don't realize actually how much control they have over their minds until like they're told and they really deal with urges and they think it through and you make that choice. Like we had a guy today who was asking about some junky thinking that was coming up, and
Yeah.
the thing that I said, I think, was like, look, yeah, you might not be able to control the first thoughts, but the space, like the gap between that very first thought of like, okay, that girl's attractive, or oh, am I having a compulsive desire right now, or even just like thought of, oh, should I go on Instagram right now, or whatever it is, it's like the gap between that very, very first thought that eventually leads into the compulsive behavior for people and like actually going and doing it, going and masturbating, looking at porn, like the space between that thought and looking at porn, such a big space. Like you have
Yeah.
so much potential to change how you act in that space. And it may feel uncomfortable and difficult, but you have the power, you have like the control over yourself in those
Mhm.
moments. Like there's never a moment when you're actually not in control of yourself. Like if your life depended on it, if someone had a gun to your head and they said, right, you are not allowed to look at porn or I'm going to kill you. It's like,
Mhm.
what would you do in that moment? But people often come to us, and at first, before like all the training and stuff, they really do think they don't have a choice in it. They think when they have an urge, like it's automatic. We've spoke about, people feeling like it's automatic and it's just something they do. And it's like, nah, that isn't true. You really do have a choice over your actions here.
And that's how extreme it would have to be too, right? someone have a gun to your head, you know, saying, if you look at porn, I'm going to kill you. I mean, and like, when is that realistically going to happen? Never. And because nobody really cares if you're looking at porn or not, much less have to go to prison for murder, right? But, and the thing is the triggers is like avoiding triggers. That idea is completely based in helplessness. And first of all, you can't avoid triggers. We've said it ad nauseum. You know, it's like you can't avoid triggers. They just can happen in your mind, you know, just because you're wired that way. It doesn't have to be seeing somebody or whatever, you know, it just will happen, you know. But that idea is that if you avoid the trigger, well, the idea of avoiding triggers is because if you are triggered, you're helpless. That's the whole idea, which is like, it's being taught, you know, avoid your triggers, because if you have this trigger, then you're going to be out of control, which is it's so prevalent with food compulsion, you know. If you eat a cookie, don't eat a cookie, don't eat even one cookie, because if you eat a cookie, you're going to eat the whole box of cookies, rather than it's reasonable to have a damn cookie. And because you have a food compulsion, you might want to eat the whole box. But that's where you can take control of your mind and establish a reasonable relationship with cookies, you know, so you don't have to be like, it was interesting today. I was looking at my Facebook page for my paddling group, and a woman posted on there. You know, people post, you know, often, and they're like, oh, I'm going to go to such and such a lake at such and such a time. If anyone wants to join, blah, blah, blah. Well, and you know, people tend to, you know, respond, but not a lot. Well, today this woman posts, oh, there's Tintin. She's in. Good girl. Um, so she says, I'm sober. So now, now it's like all these people are responding to go and meet up with her to paddle because she's sober. And I'm like, you really got to label that way? And everyone was like, oh, I'm in, I'm in, I'm in. A lot of other people said, oh, I'm sober too, you know. And one guy responds and comments and says, well, if you go to paddle, you know, with other groups or whatever, no one's going to force you to drink, you know. It's like, but now it's like this label of I'm sober. It's, I don't know, that seems, I mean, I don't want to say too much, because people that are sober probably should remain sober or whatever, but labeling it, and the idea, if I have one drink, I'm going to get out of control,
Yeah, yeah.
rather than if I have one drink, I may want to get out of control. And for me, that situation, what I would teach people is, if you decide not to drink at all, that's still a choice. And it's not because if I have one, I'm going to get out of control. My question would be, ask yourself, how much do I want it? Right? Because if you're susceptible to drinking way too much when you drink, you know, and you have one drink and it makes you really want it, and then you got to deal with the wanting and whatever. How much do you want it? If you don't want to want it at all, then you just, you know, you're still making a choice that you're not going to engage with alcohol for that reason. That's one of the benefits, is not even wanting it at all, you know.
Yeah.
But it just depends how you frame it, you know.
Yeah, so I'll give you like a good example with that. And at first I was going to say, like, what has paddling actually got to do with alcohol at all? But I'm guessing it's like a social club where, you know, people go paddling, they drink alcohol, and then someone's got it mixed up and gone, oh, you know, I'm still
Oh,
going and I'm sober, and it's like this big deal. And I see that a lot nowadays on LinkedIn, because for
yeah.
my main job outside of this work, I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot. Doing just like networking and sort of talking to people, because I host a different podcast actually. But anyway, and on there's all these like coaches now like making this massive deal about like drinking alcohol, well, not drinking alcohol and being sober, and like
Yeah.
saying, oh, I've been sober for this amount of days now. Like they're doing the sort of sober streaks and having
Yeah.
like, you know what I saw actually last week? There was someone who was doing a sober party where they were celebrating being sober. But it's like, you know, I think the problem is in our culture, it's like so ingrained, it's so like woven into our society that like drinking alcohol, especially in England, I think it might actually be even worse here than where you are. It's so like ingrained that like you drink alcohol when you go out and socialize here. And like tomorrow, you know, someone's invited me to go have some beers after work. It's with like one of our clients, and there's probably about 10 of us going. And to be honest with you, I don't know at this moment whether I'm going to drink alcohol tomorrow or not. If I fancy a
Perfect.
beer, I might have a pint. If I don't want a beer in that moment, I won't have a pint. You know, I honestly, I don't care at all.
Amen. Oh my God.
Yeah, like in the past though, I would have definitely been like, right, I am definitely not drinking tomorrow because if I drink, I'm gonna get out of control. I'm gonna have to have more drinks. I'm gonna end up looking at
Right.
porn. I'd have all
Yeah.
these conditions and restrictions and all these rules so that I wouldn't end up looking at porn the next day. Whereas now I'm just like, well, if I have an urge, which I am probably more likely to experience if I do drink alcohol, well, I will deal with the urge then and then, you know, like then and there. And that's that. It's like it's really simple now. So I think yeah, consenting to helplessness is a choice, but it's a choice
Yeah.
people make because they're in the addiction and the addicted part of the mind. What I think is so valuable, which you've taught me, is that the addicted part of the mind, like one of its main priorities is to get people into a state of helplessness. It wants
Yeah.
people questioning themselves. It wants people going around in circles, figuring out, oh, should I do this? Should I not do that? And it's like eventually you go, right, I've had enough of this, to hell with it, and then end up looking at porn. But if you can nip those thoughts in the bud like really early on, the moment you see like these questions come up and it's like, should I do this? Should I not do that? If you're aware, all right, that's probably the addicted part of my mind just talking right now. I know I don't want to look at porn. That's the real thing going on here. You make your choice in that moment and then just move on with your day. Like you can actually simplify it so much.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too, is like, there's so many things that can make you, want to act in a certain way. But, when like from doing the work, that if you use having a couple drinks as a reason to engage in porn, the long-term consequences of that. So if you have a couple drinks and then you're at a bar or something and some guy is being a jerk to some girl or something, and you want to punch him in the face. It's like you have that wanting, but your mind, the neural pathways in your mind tell you, okay, he's being a jerk to that girl. It's not cool. I'm going to punch him. I want to punch him in the face. But if I punch him in the face, the police are going to get called. I'm going to end up with an assault charge and I'm going to probably get locked up. So, but you don't really even have to totally think that through because your neural pathways are connected in that way. I punch this guy, I'm probably going to spend the night in jail or worse.
Yeah.
So you don't do it, right? Even though you want to do it, right? So once you learn, if I've had a couple drinks, I have a compulsive desire for porn. I know that if that's the choice I make, that's the long-term consequence.
Yeah,
Is
but what will
bad.
happen is because in our society, porn is so normalized and people don't see this as like a proper, real addiction, the addicted part of the mind is going to use all of that as leverage and go, oh, it's not too bad. You know, once is okay. It's not that big a deal. Everyone does it. That's all the junky thinking that then comes up in that moment when you don't actually want to look at porn. And a part of you does want to look at porn at the same time. So you got this conflict going on, but you don't want to look at porn a lot more than you actually want to look at porn. But then the junky thinking comes up,
Yeah.
tries to convince you into this state of helplessness, or tries to convince you that it's okay to look at porn, and then you go look. Whereas if you could actually connect the consequences and have like a remember letter, for example, and you really consider, okay, what are the actual consequences here? And you connect that to that neural pathway of desire and wanting, that's when you can actually think this through logically and get the right part of your brain to sort of engage with the right choice, you know, and not engage with porn.
And you
Yeah.
do the work enough, that we've talked a lot about neuroplasticity. You do the work enough, and it's not even a conscious thought at that point. Like you really don't really have a conscious thought if I punch that guy, this is what's going to happen. It just happens automatically in your brain. You don't have to, you don't have to get your script, think it through. If I punch, I'm wanting to punch this guy right now and I can, and you know, all of the, right? It just happens automatically because this is something you've had that thought process over and over and over in your life. You know the consequences of punching somebody, right? Or whatever the, example we would use. But it'll be the same thing with the porn, where it's not going to be this ongoing struggle, or whatever it is, whatever your addiction is, alcohol, whatever, those pathways can change that desire. You don't have to, you're not helpless in the face of the desire, but you don't have to feel helpless, because feeling helpless is a horrible feeling, in any situation. But we've so normalized it with any kind of addiction that, people are just helpless. They need something, they need to be medicated. They can't deal with the feelings that are going to come up. And we talked about this on the phone the other day. The friend of mine that actually died from prescription, way too many prescriptions. And she said to me on many occasions, if I'm not drugged, I'll kill myself. And it's like, okay, so you mean if you're not drugged, you will want to kill yourself, but she was so far gone with it, but she had a lot of trauma and whatever. So because of the trauma, the doctors just kept prescribing her all these different things. She just had this massive cocktail of all these different drugs, and she ended up having a stroke. So, and they found her phone where she was trying to text, and it just became like gibberish. Yeah,
That's so sad.
Had a stroke, and that was the end of her, but she had such a cocktail of drugs, and her exact thinking, I heard her say it a million times, if I'm not medicated, I'll kill myself. This was her neural pathway, so. And the thing is, go tell a medical professional that has liability issues. If I don't keep her drugged, she's going to kill herself, and that's going to be my fault, or whatever the liability issue is. But yeah, it's she had a lot of doctors, a lot of psychiatrists, all of the above, So
I think the main thing is, the main thing is helping people understand that there's a big difference between wanting to do something and doing that thing. People want to do things every single day, and they choose not to do it because they know the consequences. Whereas with porn, because of how the addictive part of the mind works, it's almost like it can try and it doesn't have to be like this, but it can try and shut down like the prefrontal cortex. Well, the dopamine basically goes through the mesolimbic pathway, which is like a primitive part of the brain. And what you can do is get that dopamine to actually pass through the mesocortical pathway instead. So you get the dopamine go into another part of the brain where you got like the prefrontal cortex and rational decision making. To do that, you need to think through the desire in that moment. And when you start to do that, like what I'd recommend anyone listening to this to do would really be just to like start to write down like, how is this addiction actually making you feel? Like, what is the actual impact on your life, and how could life be alternatively? And when the desire comes up, think through those choices, start to think through that. That's going to be a really good starting place, I think, for anybody.
Big picture, yeah, based on the big picture. Because like you say, we have thoughts all the time, It's like, oh, beautiful day. I'm going to call work and say, fuck you, I'm not coming in. But then I think, oh, well, wait a second. My job provides me with this money that pays for my mortgage, but and it's all those things, but I don't have to think that through. I just think, oh, because I do this thing that I don't always want to do, right? Because it's a beautiful day and my cat is sick and I just would like to chill out, but I know the long-term consequences of blowing off my job, it's like,
Do you think anyone listening to this will work at your place? Do you think anyone working where you work will listen to this?
Hi guys, not coming in today. No one will be listening to it. I'm
no
sure.
one will be listening.
I don't
I
think
was gonna
so.
say that's a terrible example because I thought you said earlier you were gonna not go to work tomorrow.
That I didn't want to. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna go to work today because she seems like she's all right, I guess. I don't know. I just don't want to leave her alone and then come home and although my last cat that was 20 years old, um, she got sick right before I went to Hawaii and she died while I was in Hawaii, but my friend was with her and she said that she was going out at work all day, but then she like waited till right when she got home and then she like sat down next to her and she took a couple of big heaving breaths and then she was gone. So, but she kind of waited for my friend to be with her. So that was kind of cool.
Mm.
Except for 20-year relationship. She was like she was like my longest relationship ever. And the bitch had to die while I was in Hawaii. You know, I'm just kidding. I love that cat. She was great, but yeah. And I had to try to decide, like, okay, she's acting a little weird, acting a little sick, a little funky. Do I cancel my trip? What do I do? You know? So I went and she died while I was gone. So
Mm.
had rigor mortis by the time I got home, and my son and I buried her in the yard. And this is talk about. I mean, we're saying that we try to be a little bit funny on the podcast, but the hole was it was winter and the hole was not really big enough, so we couldn't make it bigger. So Zach and I, we kind of cracked her. She had rigor mortis. I kind of cracked her and get her in the hole. We're like crying and laughing at the same time. It was horrible. But
What?
later on, I found some of her leg bones and stuff out in the garden, so we still had her in the garden with us. But yeah, Zach and I were literally laughing and crying as we cracked Halbert to fit her in the hole.
I was just gonna say I honestly don't know what to do right now. Like I'm somewhere between laughing and crying.
Yeah, right. So I know I'm gonna prepare. I'm gonna dig a hole just in case. So it's
Make
not
sure it's big
something
enough this
I'll have
time.
to do.
Jeez.
If I do call the euthanasia people for Tintin, I'm gonna dig a nice big hole and then maybe I'll even build a little gravestone or something. I can make one out of clay over at the art center where I work, in
Yeah.
memory of Tintin, make put a little cat on there. Get
Oh,
one, yeah,
well, maybe we should wrap it up there and hopefully
yeah.
Tintin's still with us by the next podcast, which will
For the
probably be
next
in a week or
podcast,
so.
Tintin,
Yeah.
say goodbye just in case. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So
Well,
cool.
thanks
Yeah,
a
that
lot.
was a good
Yeah.
good talk on helplessness for sure. I think it's really, like we've always say with the guys, there's a lot of unlearning to do.
Mm,
So unlearning that you're helpless in the
yeah.
face of whatever it is that you're wanting to do. When you have a powerful tool, which we give people to be able to think it through, whatever that is, just will become second nature and it's not going to be an ongoing struggle and broken record, permanent mental freedom is possible. So yeah.
Yeah. I think really with like our work and like the podcast, I just want people to feel like fully in control of themselves and just confident and just feeling like that peace of mind of, okay, I can actually deal with this problem now. I don't need to worry about anything. I don't need any restrictions,
Yeah,
conditions, all these different things to stay in my
yeah,
life. I can change my brain,
yeah.
permanently change my brain, like rewire the neural pathways and then just be done with this for good. That's
And
it.
whatever it is you're dealing with pornography, right? You're dealing with alcohol, you're dealing with whatever, then those pathways of learning to deal with a desire, a wanting that isn't necessarily going to have a good outcome is totally second nature. Now you get to go to a work gig tomorrow and you
Mm,
don't have to decide ahead of time whether or not you're going to have a pint. You get to
yeah.
just like whatever desire comes up, you determine in the moment is like, okay, well, I'll see, what I want to do when I'm faced with the desire and
Yeah.
based on the long term, but really, doing the work of like the primary addiction that is so powerful that it'll really bleed into any other kind of desire you have that doesn't serve you. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, and like also just a final thing from me is so I'm a big Sheffield Wednesday fan, and like we have a chant, and it's like I think most football teams have this chant, but when trouble is sort of kicking off a little bit, like the fans will start to chant like, "We'll do what we want, we'll do what we want. We're Sheffield Wednesday, we'll do what we want." And it's kind of similar with like addiction. You want to get to a position where you can just say to yourself, like, I will do what I want, I'll do what I want, I'll do what I want. Because you can go look at porn, so you can do
Yeah.
what you want. It's just you got to know them consequences at the same time. It's as simple as that. You know, you got to
And make
know
a choice
that,
in the
yeah,
moment. Hmm.
yeah, exactly. Because you can go do that, but you wouldn't be listening to this if you actually wanted to do that more than you didn't want to do that. That's the
Right.
choice.
That you want to
Yeah,
stop. Do you want to
yeah,
do it? You want to stop. That's the basic dilemma. We talk about that in phase 1 of the program. So
yeah. That's
getting real
it.
clear on that. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, yeah, thanks for staying with us for the podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.